All right, controlling chemical hazards and exposures. Controlling chemical hazards is no different than any other hazards. Often there's chemicals that workplaces simply do not allow on site because of their hazards. Engineering controls are the most effective. Typically if they're going to build something, they're going to think about, the engineers are responsible for thinking about all of those situations, right? I mean, if you're going to go into, say we're building a gas tank, but we're going to weld onto an old gas tank, then they need to know whether it's compatible, what kind of fluid's been in it, what's the condition of it, and then knowing that that gas might be absorbed into some of the metal and what that might do. So they may control to isolate the work from the hazard, outsource work, or change chemicals. Sometimes you are the outsourced work instead of just working for the engineering firm. And then ventilation or fume extraction can also be effective, which is why we always want to make sure that we've got at least open air and there's a certain amount of air around us if we don't have forced fans or forced exhaust system. All right. Number one, first most important thing you can do is keep your head out of the fume plume. All right. Now let's talk about administrative controls. They're less effective, but they're still really they're still really good. And so the administrative controls are changes in work procedures such as written safety policies, rules, supervision, schedules, training with the goal of reducing the duration, frequency, and severity of exposure to hazardous chemicals or situations. It is critical that you are trained and follow the procedures for working with chemicals in the workplace, and for many chemicals there's no true safe exposure range, so engineering and PPE controls are required. So this being said, if there's a procedure for it or a best practice or some sort of a PSM or a SPM, safety process management, in place, make sure you follow it. The situation with my father is because the cleaning procedure wasn't followed. They did 5 or 6 of these transformers before this happened, and the safety cleaning procedure and best practice was followed to a T, and there was not an issue and monitored. But the last one was kind of a rush and a hurry. Okay. And last but not least, but as you can tell, it's the least effective, and this is the one that we have control over immediately, is the PPE, the personal protective equipment. And if you're taking on the mindset, a lot of people entering the workforce take on the mindset of PPE is not cool. Well, the older you get, and the more you want to see your children or your friends or your family, or even say you enjoy fishing. I want to go up and enjoy being able to see that nice calm pool and know where I'm casting to and watch the fish come out of there. And when the smoke's not in the area, I enjoy seeing blue skies and the mountains and everything around me. Okay, so sometimes we have to do the things that are uncool to be cool, I guess. In some cases, PPE is the only method to control a health hazard. And that's sometimes just because you're working around dangerous situations. Okay, doesn't mean it can't be done, but there are procedures in order to do it, and the PPE is the only thing that you can use to control it. For chemical exposure, the proper PPE is crucial. Sometimes some types of PPE are not effective with some types of chemicals. Best one for this is to think about safety glasses. Safety glasses are the least effective with liquid chemicals. If we're dealing with liquid chemicals, typically we usually want to have goggles, correct? So that way we can make sure that it's not coming around or dripping down the sides of our traditional safety glasses or around the shields of our glasses. Okay? And then last but not least, make sure the PPE you are using works properly and is rated for the chemical and exposure you'll be dealing with. There's certain rubbers or man-made objects like rubber O-rings that will dissolve when they've been dealing with, say, diesel fuel. You need to make sure that you're using the correct material that is compatible with that chemical, right? I mean, if there's even certain types of thread sealants that we need to use when we're dealing with diesel fuel or corrosive fuel and things like that. All right. Moving on to the next slide. Spill response. Your workplace should have a protocol on what to do in the event of a spill. Different chemicals require different protocols. You should have these in mind while working with chemicals. If you notice a spill or a leak, evacuate the area or at least make it as safe as possible. Notify your supervisor and keep people out of the area. Block sewer drains or other routes the chemical could take into the environment. Do not attempt cleanup of the chemical without the proper PPE and knowledge of the cleanup process. And if you don't know what a chemical is, leave it alone. Many solvents are absorbed immediately through the skin and enter the bloodstream. So let's talk a little bit about these. Notify your supervisor and keep people out of the area. Number one, two things. Make sure you tell your boss, because they've got a protocol they need to follow as well. And they might be a little bit upset, but they're going to be even more upset if you don't clean it up and it hurts somebody later on. Number two, your colleagues and your coworkers are also people that enjoy their PPE and their own personal time, right? So if you spill something, put up some signs, tell everybody about the area, stay out of it. I dropped some acetone, quit grinding, I don't want anything to be flammable, things like that, right? It may be somebody 20 feet away, but a grinding spark can go a long ways and ignite the vapors off of it. Block sewer drains or other routes. You don't want to get into the water systems, because then it can contaminate a lot of people and or the environment. Do not attempt cleanup without the proper PPE, so to say. And so I should say, correct. Do not attempt to clean up. The only thing you should do, even if you don't know what it is, block it off to protect other people. Okay. If you don't know what the chemical is, then go to the SDS. Right. Every place has to have it, whether it's an electronic version or an actual paper version. And that kind of this last one, or this second to last one, coincides with that one. All right. Okay. Moving on. Basic first aid for chemical exposure. You check the SDS for proper response to exposure. That's why it's important to know where the SDS sheets are and to review them periodically. In case, let's just say you change the brand of something. Say you've always been using, let's say Teflon pipe dope, okay? So you've always been using the white stuff, and all of a sudden they come in and tell you, well, we're going to use TheraBlue. And if you don't know what it is, you don't just assume that it's the same thing as the pipe dope. You might want to go read through this one, and it'll tell you, oh, well, this one's used for petrochemicals, so it doesn't ignite and create a fire. Okay. In case of let's go back to the PowerPoint here. In case of ingestion, check the SDS. Inhalation, the same thing. First thing you got to do is remove the victim to fresh air, outdoors preferably, and get medical help. This is also as long as you are safe, right? It's kind of like the electrical analogy. If somebody's being shocked, don't go in and touch them, because then you're going to fall dead as well. The first thing you need to do is isolate the source if possible, and then you are able to go into the area and remove the victim to fresh air. If it's a cloud of smoke or fumes, wait or find the proper PPE, like an air respirator or something, or SCBA rescue kit, in order to go in and remove the victim to fresh air. It's horrible that somebody might be hurt and possibly lose their life, but it's even worse if two of you are in there, or three or four. Okay. In case of skin contact, flush the area with water for at least 15 minutes. Remove all contaminated clothing and jewelry. And some facilities have emergency showers to rinse chemicals from the victim, and get medical help immediately. Alright. In case of eye contact, do not rub the eye. Get the victim to an eye wash station and flush the eye for at least 15 minutes while holding the eyelids open, and get medical help. Now, as welders, this is a big one. We're going to get stuff in our eyes every once in a while, and luckily, if you're wearing your safety glasses, then it's not being shot in there at a very forceful manner. It's usually getting in there as it's falling into the eyelid or come off the eyelashes or something like that. But the thing that most people want to do is rub their eye immediately, and then they can actually push that into the eyelid, creating an issue. So if you see somebody rubbing their eyes and like they scream and rub their eyes because they got something in their eye, go over and say, don't rub your eye, don't rub your eye, don't rub your eye. You're making it worse. All right. In case of a chemical injection, call 911 immediately. And in this case, try to do the same thing we would do with like a snake bite victim. Try to keep them as calm as you can. Don't look at their heart rate elevated. Sit them down. Don't let them walk around and get that into their stream even faster. Okay? 2, let's wrap it up. Let's look at the key ideas. You'll always be working around chemicals. Knowledge about the chemical safety procedures, exposure routes, and PPE requirements is your greatest asset when it comes to staying safe. Make sure you review the SDS sheets before you work with a chemical, and make sure you are following the correct procedures and using the correct PPE. Know the location of eye wash stations, emergency showers, first aid supplies, and the SDS sheets before there's an accident, and know how they operate. And this might be the person in the next bay. If they're working on gas or open fuel tanks and you're welding right next to them and throwing air arc sparks or grinding sparks that way, know your surroundings before you start anywhere, okay, for first aid and to avoid issues. Next one, sensitizers are very dangerous because they may not appear to be affecting you until you have a serious reaction. So it's kind of like a long set or a delayed reaction, so to say. Okay. All chemical containers must be labeled for content. Even a spray bottle of water must be marked as such. I can't tell you how many times working in a Faber machine shop I've seen acetone go and be put in something and not marked, and it looks just like water, or even put in somebody's coffee cup, and then they're like, we'll just wash it out later. Well, it'll evaporate, but then you would hate for somebody to come over and take a drink of it, or you even forget yourself. All right? So make sure that they're going in the correct containers and also labeled for content, even if it's just a spray bottle with water or soap and water. Okay? Hygiene is key when working with chemicals. You do not want to expose your family to chemicals that you were exposed to at work. So there's a lot of times when I've worked in serious situations with sulfur, coal, and things of those manners, to where when I came home, I've stripped out of my work clothes in the garage and then went in and took a shower immediately instead of sitting down on the couch, and so forth. All right? And here are the references that we use for this. Basically, to kind of wrap this up on just the lecture end, if you've got any questions, number one, the best place to start is the SDS. It tells you about the chemical and so forth. Know your surroundings, and we should be good from there. Thank you very much, and have a good day.